My dad worked in the woods, you know, in the 40s for Macmillan, before it was Macmillan Bloedel. He put himself through school, and just imagine what it was like on Vancouver Island then. I know that H.R. Macmillan, I got to know him as a kid too. He surveyed the island from Campbell River north, and then he went, I'll get dibs on, I'm sure, the best wood that was ever anywhere, you know, the old firs. And I'm not making any comment about, you know, I believe in protecting the forest now, but this was a different time. So my dad went to St. Louis College in Victoria, and his parents split up, and his father was a drinker and a fighter, and his mom worked at BC Tel. And I was born in Nanaimo, and in 1963, he was made vice president at Macmillan Bloedel, the logging division, which is the biggest one, and we moved to Vancouver. And we bought a house in Kerrisdale, 57th and Angus Drive, and what a different time. I mean, the industry was super powerful. And you know, I met Jack Monroe and H.R. Macmillan and Herb Doman and all these kind of legendary guys. I went to Catholic school. Because I was the kid that didn't mind strangers, I used to go with my dad in the Grum and Goose. He had a plane to go to check out log camps. He also ran the FIFT, which is the Martin Mars water bombers. There's a lot of discussion about them. The companies bought the water bombers because at that point, the government forester would come out and just take down how far the fire had burned. There was no effort to put fires out before. So the companies bought, so at that time, BCFP, Crown Zellerbach, Doman, Macmillan Bloedel, bought the Martin Mars from the U.S. military. They were originally used to take soldiers and Marines, et cetera, off the islands in the Pacific. So there's huge planes. They converted them to fight fires, and FIFT, Forest Industry Flying Tankers. So it was pretty cool. When we were kids, we'd get to crawl around in the rubber wings, but I flew into these small log camps with my dad, and because I was comfortable with you know, I would fish off the dock and catch cohos. I mean, we caught a lot of coho in Nanaimo when I lived there too, and it was just seeing what's happened with the fishery. It's pretty tough. We caught a lot of fish, and he'd go into some log camp and leave me in the stream, and I'd be pulling out trout. So kind of tough to see the fishery decline like that. Another thing that I did with my dad is when we lived in Nanaimo, is we'd go on the CP ferry. There used to be a ferry that went downtown Vancouver to downtown Nanaimo. It was 4 hours. I don't know if anyone's old enough to remember it, but you know, Macmillan Bloedel had a reservation. It took maybe about 10 cars, maybe 12, but they also had rail cars in the bottom of it. So it was really for the rail. And it was a seaworthy ship. When the BC ferry used to break down, we'd take it. And plus it was CP, so you'd get the silverware and the fancy food. And later on, when we were in high school, we used to go take our girlfriends and rent a stateroom and go 4 hours there and 4 hours back and tell whatever we were staying at somebody's house. And that was a lot of fun too. In 1968, my brother and I went to Copper Canyon by Chemainus. And they were cutting trees at the Expo 70, the BC Pavilion at Expo 70 in Japan. So there was a stand of Douglas firs. Now, if you look earlier, in 1952, they cut the largest flagpole in history at the same place for Kew Gardens. So I'm guessing there was about 50 trees, all over 250 feet high. All Douglas firs, pencil straight, perfect. So when they cut them, they put them on, usually they cut them into 40-foot sections, you know, to use at the mill. These trees were, you know, on 2 log trucks and probably 150 feet in between. And you can even go in, if you go Expo 70 logs, Macmillan Bloedel, you can still see them. And I've seen the picture of the trucks moving around a corner, and I know we were right behind them. So they take them to the water and they drop them in the water. They boomed them over to Vancouver, and then they put them on a ship to go to Japan, and they almost had to throw them overboard. They hit a typhoon on the way back. But they were in Expo 70. And that was a pretty cool thing. We grew up with a pool because my dad was busy in the summer. And what can I say? I got to meet, when I went to the woods, I got to see the respect that all these people had for my father and meet the men of the woods and such a different time. And so my dad would often take the bus home from work, and he'd come walking down the lane. And of course, our Dalmatian would always, oh, there he is. And occasionally my dad would come home in a super good mood, and he'd mess up my hair and call me Sport. That was my dad was in a super good mood. He'd say, hey, Sport. And he'd roll around on the living room carpet with the Dalmatian. And my mother would look at me and she'd go, he fired somebody today. and so we'd be having dinner and he'd go, yeah, you know, Johnson, he's no longer with the company. Ha, ha, ha. And so anyway, I'm pretty lucky. I mean, my dad died in 1985, and he worked himself to death. He was from that generation where you worked so hard. He came from nothing. He left a legacy for all of us. And when my dad passed away, he asked me to take care of my mom, which I did. That's why I enjoy being a businessman, but I don't want to I want to have a nice balance between making money and I've gone into the arts anyway. But my dad died in 1985, and I miss him every day. Bob Chisholm.